Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from Delta CX, and I am live as always on Tuesdays to take your questions. I'm here to mentor and coach and advise and help in any way that I can. You can ask your questions in the live chat, though your name will come up. If you need something longer or more anonymous, you can go to deltacx.com/links where you can see how to join our online communities and you can ask your question there anonymously. I just got my computer glasses, so I'm trying those out. I have to admit they're making me a little dizzy, but the stuff on the screen is clearer, so I assume I will eventually get used to them. I'll turn my mic down a little bit. I am just a loud person. We had one question come in ahead of time, so we'll be starting with that one. You can always send in your questions 24 hours a day. They don't wake me up. They get saved for Tuesdays, so send them on in anytime. And thanks, as always, to our paid Patreon members. We've got, I think, over 280 free and paid Patreon members, and I love to see everybody joining, free or paid, because it's a great place to connect with us and remove those algorithms. And so, yeah, this is currently our paid peeps, and thank you very much to past, present, and future paid peeps. So come learn about the perks and join at patreon.com/cxcc. So, I'm going to start with the one question that came in, and it would be fine by me if today is a short show because I am feeling really tired. But today's question that came in asked, any software recommendations for remote or mobile user interviews and observations? So there's a couple of things that I look for in these types of tools. So to me, it's not like, oh, you have to use tool X and that's the way to go. I don't have a specific tool recommendation. There's pros and cons to a lot of them. For example, I like Google Meet a lot, hashtag not sponsored, but their recordings are not very high quality. The recordings to me usually look a little grainy, and if I'm recording a session with someone, especially where they've shared a screen or held up a piece of paper they use, I want that as clear as possible. So I don't use Google Meet for that. I used to use Zoom, but I don't like their terms and conditions. But their recordings are really sharp. So you have to decide how you feel about the terms and conditions. Another issue is that a lot of these systems don't do a good job hiding if you have people like observers and note takers. So sometimes we have multiple note takers. We have observers from our larger cross-functional team or stakeholder group, and then our participant sees that there are 2, 5, 10 people here, and it really can make them behave differently because now they think like, whoa, there's a whole crowd watching me. I'm not sure how I feel about this. It would be nice, where possible, to look for tools and systems that have ways to hide who else is there other than the moderator and the participant, but allow some behind-the-scenes communication between moderators and observers or moderators and note takers. There are a few companies that do that, but last time I reviewed their tools, I didn't like any of them. So, if you want to check them out, you certainly can. I think Lookback might have been one of them, and I ended up not picking them. I think UX Tweak announced that they're coming out with their own version. I saw an early version of it, and I felt it was not quite ready for release. But I usually like what UX Tweak does. Hashtag not sponsored. And so I'm hoping that their solution will be stronger once they clean it up a little bit and get it out there. So, if you are going to be remote, then I think these are some of the things to think of. Another thing to think about is how easy is it for the user to use it? Things like Zoom sometimes require people to install the client, or they require them, especially on Mac. Zoom requires people to go into their Mac settings and allow a screen share. So that can sometimes, we've had that make sessions last 15 minutes minutes longer while people tried to figure that out, especially on their Mac. It made them leave the session and then they had to come back. So that's another thing to think about is does something that is browser-based work? Can you share your screen in it? Does it record at very high quality? These are some of the things that I'm looking for. So software recommendations, there's a lot out there, but I would say those are some of the qualities that I look for when I'm doing this. I'm hoping that UX Tweak has something better coming. I'm probably stuck using Zoom for now, even though I don't like their privacy policy and terms and conditions. And every time I have to click accept, I die a little inside because I know I don't really accept what they're doing. That's a personal opinion. So while I can't say, oh, everybody's got to use Zoom or everybody's got to use this, I would say those are some of the qualities to look for as you try out different systems and try to figure out what might work best for you. So thank you for that question. Looks like we've got another question coming in. Let's put that one up on the screen and let me make sure it's in our, oh great, here we go. This is a super question. Thank you to the person who has asked it. And let's copy paste. There we go. So this says, you and Darren Hood, and I would add lots of other people, have talked about UX is not design thinking. Can you explain more what you mean by this? I'm trying to be aware of misinformation surrounding the field. Sure. First of all, if you really want to go there, I have hours about this on the Delta CX YouTube channel. We are on the CX-CC YouTube channel right now. My old YouTube channel has lots of this. How do you find it? Go to YouTube and search for Delta CX Design Thinking. You'll probably get episode 108, What Isn't Design Thinking? You'll get episode 115 and possibly 116. You will get maybe episode, 35 or 37. I think you'll get a bunch of stuff, and you might even be overwhelmed by how much stuff you get, including a couple of short videos. But let me give you the short version here. The origins of design thinking, which are an interesting story, which we've talked about before, especially on the other channel. The origins of design thinking came before IDEO and before anybody, and it was a way to try to say that just like we have systems thinking, there's a certain way that people who work in human-centered design tend to approach something, and we'll call that design thinking. And I don't think that term completely caught on, but what happened was when IDEO was trying to reinvent their business because their business was failing, and this was roughly 2003, and I wrote an article on this. It's called, Was Design Thinking Designed to Not Work? I think you can Google for that. I retell this story. They figured, you know what's probably better than doing projects for people? Coming up with a system, a framework that we can train. There's probably a lot more money in training the framework and the method than doing what we do. Now, part of what made IDEO special at the time was the people they hired. At least the rumor was, they were hiring the best people from human factors engineering, industrial design, psychology, behavioral economics. Like, they really had a super team of highly competent, experienced people who were really going to make things happen. But when they created design thinking, because their goal was, how do we train people on something that anybody can do? And how do we make it so that anybody can do it and nobody feels left out and everybody feels like they get a trophy and they're the winner? You know, how do we super simplify this? Because if they have to be a real human-centered design person, they won't do this well. If they have to be a real human factors engineer, they won't do this well. Things like that. So design thinking ends up having a variety of definitions. There are the more old school people who say, hey, design thinking is really full, complete, human-centered design just with this cool new name, which it didn't need. It had a name. human-centered design. And then there are people on the opposite end of the spectrum who are less familiar with human-centered design and the ISO standards around it and its foundations in psychology, and they might say, hey, design thinking is this really fast, easy way to innovate and brainstorm, and it's just something that can take even a few hours. And of course, that is opposite from the messages we normally try to send people about CX and UX and service design and human-centered design work, which is, if we really want to do this well, it doesn't take hours. A fuller process is going to take a lot more than hours. When IDEO does a project for a company, they spend more than a few hours or a few days. So, one of the many problems with design thinking, which we go through in episode 108, which you'll find in your YouTube search results, is that UX and design thinking are usually not the same thing. Many people don't see them as the same thing. Some people who are newer to the field and maybe even heard design thinking before they heard UX might think, oh, these are the same thing. But I think the more you know about CX, UX, human-centered design, service design, things like that, the more you know about that and the full process and a full approach to the scientific method, the more you will see that most versions, not all, but most versions of design thinking are just nowhere near that. So design thinking was designed to be a derivative of HCD that was so small and so fast that anybody could do it. And there aren't really standards for how well it's done. There's a lot of stuff in design thinking that is missing. Did we do this well? How do we know we did this well? I think for many people, design thinking looks like, hey, just show up to a workshop and empathize. Have empathy. Yeah, I don't have my, people are used to my, what do you call it? I'm having a little bit of brain fog today. Here we go. Empathy. My effects. So people are used to hearing, oh yeah, just show up to a workshop. Step 1, have empathy, as if that's something we turn off and on. And you can't really have good empathy or real empathy without doing good research first, qualitative research that really understands target audiences. If we're guessing about them, hypothesizing, assuming, stereotyping, making stuff up, our empathy is fake and our empathy is theater. So step 1 empathy doesn't even make sense. We've covered this, I think, in episode 115. I don't think it was 116. I think it was 115. And some episodes before that, which now I'm not remembering the number. 30-something, 40-something, 50, somewhere around that. It's going to be a low number. And so, yeah, so when I take a look at the work that I do, or when Darren takes a look at the work that he does, which I'm just guessing because I don't work with Darren, but I don't start with step 1, have empathy. For me, it's step 1, what's going on here? What are we doing? What do we know? What don't we know? What do we need to research to have better evidence, data, and knowledge so we can make better strategies, priorities, and decisions? I think I've got some fresh graphics around that. And so step 1 isn't empathy. I can't have empathy until I've got good evidence, data, and knowledge. And then I could say, okay, now I really get people. I get their tasks. I get their workflows. I get their approaches. I get their mental models. I get their perspectives. I get their problems and pain points. Now, if I want to have empathy, I can. I'll settle for sympathy. I'll settle for whatever. You don't need empathy. It's honestly, it's optional. So even if you don't have empathy, even if you can't see their world through their eyes, if you have enough sympathy and care, you can still do some great things. And so, so design thinking isn't really UX. It was something that a company was selling mostly to non-UX people. They were selling the fantasy that if you can just do this workshop for a few hours or a handful of days, you can be like Debbie, you can be like Larry Marine, you can be like Dr. Nick and Darren and Thomas Wilson. Hey, you don't need to really have their talent or skill or education or experience. We're all design thinkers. So it sells a fantasy, and the fantasy doesn't really look like our work or process. It's just a really kind of slimmed down derivative, watered down derivative. So that would be my medium sized version of why design thinking and UX aren't necessarily the same thing. When people ask me, hey, how do you feel about design thinking? The first thing I do is check their definition of it. Because if their definition of it is, hey, it's the full human centered design process from end to end, we're going to do it all and we're not going to skimp on it, we're going to go for quality, then I go, cool, sounds great. That's what I do. I call it human centered design. Some people might say user centered design. Some people might say design thinking. But the problem is with human centered design, many of us think this. With user centered design, many of us think this. Or double diamond, because double diamond is also a derivative of this. But design thinking isn't necessarily any of these things. Design thinking could be come to a workshop for a few days, do crazy eights, come up with guest solutions at a guest problem, and wow, you're innovating. Not the same. So just a couple of thoughts there on why those are different. It's hard to give a shorter answer for that, but thank you for the question. And let's see. Do, 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 do. Do, do, do. Just checking my emails to see if there are any other questions. I know my timer is running down today. I just didn't feel very energetic, so I put a short timer on today in case we didn't get too many questions. I'm also not seeing comments in the chat. I don't know if the chat is broken today, so I apologize if you're leaving comments and the chat is not picking them up, because normally they would show up on the screen here. So sorry if my chat's broken today and you're leaving comments wildly, but you can leave questions at deltacx.com/links. If you leave a question when I am not live on the air, I just save it for next week. I am not going to throw it away. You didn't miss your chance. And of course, if you are part of our online communities, those are also good places to ask questions. For our Patreons, mid-level and higher, we've got the special Discord channel, Q for AMA, where I can certainly take your questions on any other day. And if you are part of our new super secret support group, that could be a good place to get my help as well. So if you are looking for a little more recurring access to me and you currently work in CX, UX, or product, sneak preview. It's not public yet, but check it out. We're looking for members, cxcc.to/support-group. Give that a look. See if that's something you might want to join, and come on in. I think we have 38 people already, and my goal is to have over 100 this month. So I hope we will have lots of people joining up and trying it out and helping evolve it into something that is high value for people who are currently working and need more support, mentoring, and coaching. Okay, since I don't see any other questions and since I'm feeling a bit low energy, I think I'm going to wrap it up with my thanks to everybody who may have joined live or is watching it later. These are always archived on YouTube afterwards. Let me know what you think of my new glasses, and let me know if seeing my ring light in my glasses is distracting and bothersome. I don't know why it's green. It's a white light, but there you go. I don't have the other lights on. Maybe that would help or be worse. Hard to say. So I hope everybody has a super rest of your Tuesday. Please keep sending your questions in or send them in through our communities where I can help you there as well. And I will catch everybody tomorrow in the continuation of our super webinar from yesterday. Tomorrow, June 5, 2024 at 11 p.m. Italy time. The second half of the Open Questions to Planning Research webinar. If you haven't caught that yet, it'll be here on the YouTube channel starting on June 17 because paid Patreon members get everything first for 2 weeks. On that note, I'm going to flame us out of here. I hope everybody has a super Tuesday, and I will catch y'all soon. Bye.